Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1168 of our daily content grind. Now before we begin the tier listing, I do want to point out something. I never really push my affiliate links anymore. I just kind of count on you to see that I have an affiliate link and use it as you wish. But I'm going to shill my Entertainment Earth link right now because they started their Black Friday stuff and it's a lot of discount. Normally my link will save you 10% off an in-stock order already, but for Black Friday, you have increasing discounts based on how much you spend, anywhere between 10 and 50 bucks off. You have a deal on Lego, where if you spend more than $100, you're going to get a $20 gift code that you can use store-wide. And if you spend more than $39, you're going to get free shipping on top of all of that. That's a lot. That's a lot. So, I always appreciate anyone who uses my link to go shopping at Entertainment Earth. It helps out the channel a lot while giving you a discount on the toys you're going to buy anyway. Everyone comes up on the upside here. So thank you very much for using it. I do appreciate it. Now let's talk about the Ultra Magni, shall we? This one I felt was an interesting tier list to do because there's so many different things you have to consider with Ultra Magnuses when you are tier listing them, because it's about that particular Magnus and how good they are doing at the job of that version of Ultra Magnus, because we have the Ultras that are just a white Optimus Prime repaint. We have the Ultras that go straight from vehicle to Super Robot. And then we have the Ultras who go through the whole armor up process. And then we have the Ultras who do completely different things altogether. There's a lot. There's a lot that goes into making a good Ultra Magnus, and it varies in opinion what that is. I expect a lot of dissenting opinions because I'm just going to go with my gut on this list. And with that, we have to start where it all started, which is the original G1 Ultra Magnus. For him, I'm going to keep the time frame in mind. It's 1986. This is the very first Super Mode trailer combining Transformer ever. So we need to keep it in perspective of how good it was for its time. And for its time, I don't see how you can't make it Holy Grail tier. Not only are you getting like a working car carrier that hauls a whole bunch of Autobot cars, you are getting a white Optimus Prime that works and does everything the original Optimus Prime did, sans some accessories. But you're also getting, the trailer that, actually becomes like, you can make a base mode out of it. And of course you can armor him up into the Super Robot. That's a lot. For 1986, that's a ton of play value. I don't see how you can't make it Holy Grail tier. Inversely, you have Ultra Magnus's first Masterpiece release, which is a repaint of MPO1. This is the all-white Optimus Prime. And here's the weird thing. I don't think this one wears it very well. For two reasons. Number one, the colors are a little bit off. The blue is very dark and doesn't really pop on the toy the way it should. And it's one of those white Ultra Magnuses that tried to add a little bit of teal to the color scheme, and I don't like the teal. I think it throws things off a little bit. Minor gripe, I will admit, but it does knock my score down a little bit. I just don't think the toy wears Ultra Magnus very well. It just kind of feels like a compulsory repaint that they felt like they had to do, because, what else were you going to do with a G1 Optimus Prime at the time? So that said, I'm probably going to end up low retail release just because it just doesn't feel like it works as an Ultra Magnus. Still a decent toy, but as Ultra Magnus, it just don't feel right, But he did have another shot. We have a Masterpiece Ultra Magnus, and how do I not put it at the top? This was a really, really special piece. This actually did work really, really well. As the Ultra Magnus. As the Ultra Magnus, it goes straight from vehicle to Super Robot, which is admittedly my preference for Ultra Magnus. That works for me. And then it hits a lot of the right notes, and it hits the proportions the way that I want them hit. He looks like a powerhouse robot without looking swollen in the wrong directions. We'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I don't think you can deny the Masterpiece here. Probably not anything knocking him off the top of the list, if we're being honest. I tried to put this list a little bit more chronologically, or at the very least in the order TF Wiki spat the images out on me. Normally they're a little bit more randomized than this. The eHobby G2 Ultra Magnus, and guess what? I really think this is clever. I think this works really, really well, honestly. So you are getting some of the original, the original G1 Ultra Magnus coloring in there, but a little bit of the white Optimus Prime as well. It's an interesting blend of the two. And while, like it's hitting the right notes because it's taking advantage of the shape of the toy, those high shoulder stacks that G2 Optimus has, that works to create the white stacks on Ultra Magnus's shoulders. That's a genius little bit to repaint in. And he basically kind of looks like a white Ultra Magnus that's wearing like a bit of the Ultra Magnus armor still. It's an interesting blend. It's a really interesting blend. Admittedly, not a toy I have, but one of those that's on my short list of like, if I ever had infinite money, I think I kind of want to go back and get that Magnus because it's just a really, really neat idea. Classics Ultra Magnus was one of the first white Optimus Prime repaints that was available all on its own, at least as far as G1 based ones go. And I do like what it's doing. So I shouldn't like this one because it's really just like a plain white Magnus, but with the Optimus Prime blue boots. But I do think that adds enough of the blue to make it more interesting. And here's the weird thing. It's the translucent blue that's popping so hard on the toy against the white that makes this work. I could have done with the blue face paint. That would have been that would have been one notch even better. But I do think it works, as a simplified take on Ultra Magnus. It's definitely more interesting to me. So like I said, there's room for improvement. I'll probably be high retail release by the time we are done. But I think it does just enough of the blue to offset the white and really kind of like give me a nice like color mix to it. And it is still a good toy. Like the G1 like the MPO one is in there right now. It's still a good toy. It's missing a little bit to raise it up. What do we do with the titanium? On the one hand, it's not great. As a standalone figure, it's not great. People went nuts for it back in the day because this is one of the first Ultra Magnuses you could get that went from the vehicle to the super robot without a stage in between. And for titanium, it was one of the better titanium toys. But that's kind of like being the best piece of dog poop in your backyard. You don't win many awards for that. And that's not to say it isn't without its flaws. The shoulders look like they've been broken off. They sit so far back on his torso with no way to move them up to where shoulders should actually be. The sculpting on it is very odd. Like the head sculpt is super weird. Yeah. It's working as a Magnus, yes, but I don't think it's pulling it off exceptionally well. I do think it's one of the better titanium toys, but we can't. I'm not putting him that high up. He's going to be very low retail. I might move him down to bargain bin based on how the rest of this balances out. And we need to save room in the bottoms for the War Within based Ultra Magnus. Now, I don't recall War Within Magnus ever existing like this. It's just an excuse to repaint the Optimus Prime toy they had, and not a very good one at that. This is one of the ones that goes too heavy on the blue. It's trying to work it in too many locations, and you start to lose the plot. Like you're starting to go off the rails a little bit too far. I don't think it looks good. That mold, the toughness of that mold would lend itself to like a Nemesis Prime, a Scourge. But not Magnus. There's the shape of it is just too far off, and it's just going way too heavy. The blue is becoming dominant, which is not what you want for a Optimus Prime Magnus. Not good, and not a good toy either, by the way. All right, Alternity, basically kind of doing the same thing. Alternity is, as an Ultra Magnus, frankly, boring. There's no attempt to mix the colors up at all. I mean, he is mostly just white and gray. There is one trace of blue on him, and that is the face mask. That is it. And that is not really working as an Ultra Magnus. That don't work for me, brother. I'm no selling this one. It's just dull. It's just dull. I will at least give the War Within one credit. I mean, it looks a little bit more dynamic. The blue's way too heavy. It's not lifting its weight as an Ultra Magnus, but it's doing more than the Alternity is to convey the character. Like we have those, like, which one was it? Like, because I thought it was this toy that was marketed as Optimus Prime Marine type, which was just an Ultra Magnus repaint, but they still wanted to call it Optimus Prime. That's what this one feels like. Like, it's an Optimus Prime that just happens to be white. That's it. That just feels like what this one is. So, dull, boring, doesn't really take advantage of the character. Bad Magnus. Ultra Mammoth hits that same sweet note of genius that the G2 Ultra Magnus hits. And in fact, it might be even more clever, because it's such a good way of working in a G1 character into a Beast Wars mold. The alt mode fits Ultra Magnus. It's a big, heavy alt mode. You can get more like the shoulder pylon look out of like the tusks of those big shoulder guards. It has a Matrix annex, so that actually works for Ultra Magnus. And then again, like the E-Hobby repaint, you're doing a lot of really cool work with like mixing in the normal Ultra Magnus and the white Optimus Prime Magnus. It's such an interesting blend. It's a very interesting one. I'm putting that to the top. I think that's one of the most genius Magnuses they ever did. And the name, if it goes down to even the name. If Optimus Prime becomes Optimus Primal because he's a gorilla, then obviously Ultra Magnus is going to become Ultra Mammoth. It's so perfect. It's perfect all the way around. Like, there's no topping that. There's no topping that. Okay. So this is the Combiner War 1 based on the IDW design. If you've followed me and you've heard me talk about this toy in the past, you will know that this is one of my favorite Ultra Magnus toys, if not my absolute favorite. Now, if you are looking for, like this is one, again, that goes from normal vehicle to super robot, but you have the idea of that original concept with the Minimus Ambus figure hiding in the torso, which also conveys the storyline of the IDW comics at the same time. I do think it's a brilliant blend. I do think it works really, really well. I'm going to put him up to Holy Grail. I know a lot of people aren't thrilled with that toy. I understand why. I really, really like that figure. That's just my personal preference here. Do not judge me on it. Just my list. It's my list. Go away. I threw the Q Transformer in here because it's just adorable. It's just this adorable little Ultra Magnus. It's doing both. Here's what threw it on here, and here's what makes me laugh. So we've talked about the G2 Ultra Magnus and the E-Hobby Ultra Magnus, who have that white Optimus head, but still have elements of the full armored as part of their deco. This is the opposite, where he's got the armored look in the arms and the head, but the body looks like the normal white Optimus Prime. He's inverse to the others. But he's just doing this cute little job as Ultra Magnus. He's adorable. He's just a little guy. He's just a little guy. Where did he go? I'm not going to put him too terribly high because, of course, it's just like a simplified little figure. But, like, I think it's an adorable little Magnus. I think he wears the Q Transformer gimmick pretty well. We're going to get to a contentious one right now with Siege Ultra Magnus. I have bought this toy so many times, waiting for it to actually hit me and feel good. I bought the Siege figure when it first came out. Didn't really like it. I didn't like how the armor kind of cobbled together for the vehicle mode. I wasn't really huge on the idea of him being like RID Magnus in vehicle mode. I thought that was clever, but it felt like it felt like it was aping the other Magnus, inappropriately, if that makes any sense. It didn't feel like what Ultra Magnus really would be as a Cybertronian design. Let's put it that way. But for me, it was just like, once you got it combined, like, it didn't feel good. Like, it felt off. Like, he does the armor up thing, but it just doesn't feel right. Like, he's got proportions I don't like. He's got elements in the vehicle mode I don't like. Like the fact that they don't transform his arms at all. There are definite flaws to the figure. He's doing the Ultra Magnus thing, but I don't think he's doing it all that well. I'm putting him like right smack dab in the middle. It's a toy. I gave this toy so many chances. I bought it when it was brand new, sold it off. I bought it again when I found it at Ross for like 17 bucks. Sold it off again because I still just wasn't feeling this toy. Bought the Kingdom version. I thought G1 design this time will fit better, will feel better. No, did not. Still don't like this toy. Didn't like the Optimus Prime takes on it either. I didn't like this toy until it became Nova Prime. It had to go that long. I don't know why. Like, I don't like how the armor worked. I don't like how he looked in super mode. I thought he looked like really squat, like short-legged. Like, it looked weird for Magnus. Like, I didn't get like the elements of Magnus that I really wanted out of it. That said, now we have the Studio Series Ultra Magnus, and that changes things considerably. Again, from vehicle to super robot. I like that. He has a lot of little features and a pretty interesting transformation that, I do like. Like, he's trying to pull off a lot, and he manages to do it. The toy is not without its flaws. I think he's I think he's way too barrel-chested. I think his shoulder stance is way too wide. Like, proportionally, he doesn't look right for Ultra Magnus. Because Ultra Magnus, I feel like, needs to be viewed as tall before he is viewed as wide. And that's not Studio Series Ultra Magnus. Studio Series Ultra Magnus is wide before he's tall, if that makes any kind of sense. But it's what throws it off about me. For me, like, it just throws it off. I will admit, very, very good toy. I'll put it to premium price because it's a very good toy. But I don't think it's hitting the right notes. I think it's a little bit off still. I'm still looking for what I would call a definitive Ultra Magnus. And if I want to reach for a Magnus to mess with, I'm still going to go for the IDW Combiner Wars one. Truthfully. We are up to the other Ultra Magnuses. We've left Generation 1, and we are now entering the other dimensions. Starting with the RID Ultra Magnus. Here's where I upset a lot of you. Here's where I upset a lot of fanboys out there. Meh. I know a lot of people who love that figure. I don't think it's particularly great. Now, keep in mind, I'm not judging this based on its combination abilities, because when you go to Omega Prime, he looks nice, but I feel like that's really that Fire Convoy being so good that that's what's carrying that combination. I'm not factoring that in. I'm basing it solely on what it does itself. And what it does itself is, honestly, not the best experience. It's a lot of very hollowed out panels folding around, to make the legs. The legs end up extremely hollow. It makes him very unbalanced in robot mode and hard to pose. He's got these huge, heavy forearms because they have to be Omega Prime's armor. Which can put a lot of wear on the ball joints that make up his shoulders and elbows. It's just proportionally awkward. Like, this guy's got such a tiny torso for his gigantic Popeye arms and huge legs. Interesting look, to be sure, but not the best of looks. I'm giving him points because he does work as a car carrier. I'm deducting points because he's a part former at an age where part forming shouldn't have been a thing. I know he has to form armor. Okay, okay, fine. We'll neutralize it. I still don't think on its own it's all that great. I think we hyped it up way too much. I'm hoping, and it looks like, the HasLab is going to address some of the issues I always had with that design. So we will see how that turns out. Don't have too much longer to wait for that, I don't think. They said coming out like spring next year, I think. I hope. Let's see, who else we got now? In contrast, here's the tiny version of that Magnus, and oddly enough, when you take out that combiner part of him, you get to work a lot nicer. That Magnus don't do anything wrong, really. Like, it still looks like him. Like, as a tiny little $5 figure, it's doing everything he should do as RID Ultra Magnus. It's just an independent little guy. Carrier mode still looks good. Robot mode actually has fewer flaws to it because it doesn't have this huge heavy backpack. It does not have hollow legs, which keep it from balancing. You know what? It's gonna be a weird tier list where this little like spy changer, akin figure can actually place higher than the, like the big leader class toy that it was designed to mimic. But yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like for my money investment, that's a better toy. I feel like that's a fine toy that doesn't really hurt anything. It's not really doing anything wrong, really. Ironic that animated Ultra Magnus. I do love this figure. I do really, really like this figure. I'm not entirely sure where to put it. I don't think it's Holy Grail tier, but where does it go in premium? Is it better than the Studio Series? So it does have the advantage of animated, and like that show worked so well in tandem with its designers that, yeah, like animation accuracy, spot on. All of animated toy lines are. I love how, I love the different take on his vehicle mode as like the military missile truck. I think that works for Magnus. I like the alterations to his robot mode. Like, it still feels like it hits the right notes while still being a different take on the character. It's a great figure. I love that figure. And I feel like as a toy, I like it better than the Studio Series Magnus, but I don't think it's quite as clever as the G2 Ultra Magnus. I think it lives somewhere in the middle of those two. It's just as far as like how good it is as a toy. But I do still really like it. There's a lot of stuff to love in that toy. We're entering the Prime sector now, and for Transformers Prime, we have two distinctly different Ultra Magnuses. The first one is a technically flawed toy that I actually really like the look of. It is trying to emulate and continue the design ideas that Animated brought forward, because he is more like a missile truck than a standard like Optimus Prime repaint. He's got more rounded designs to him. The front end becomes big shoulder guards. This mold was freaking ideal to do like a Euro G1 clench that we never got. Fun Pub, you failed me. The toy, like I said, it does have some technical flaws. It's not a fantastic figure, but I do think it's a really, really good one. I do think it is a fun toy, and I do wish it became the standard for Ultra Magnus in that fiction, because unfortunately we had this guy instead. So we went from having a unique Ultra Magnus that was based in animated and looked real nice beside that bulkhead who came from that same universe. And instead we got what I felt like was the most forced Optimus Prime Ultra Magnus repaint we had ever had. I'm not a fan of the wing pack being added on. I'm not a fan of the big like shoulder hunks being added in that ruined the look in vehicle mode. I don't like that the vehicle mode is just Optimus Prime but blue. Like, it just, like, at the very least, throw some white in the vehicle mode so I kind of get the right idea. So like it conveys Ultra Magnus in vehicle mode. It doesn't convey Magnus in vehicle mode. Like, it conveys, like it can, and honestly, like, it conveys like Night Watch Optimus Prime vibes. And not done mention, like, this is also, we're dealing with like the mainline Prime Voyager mold, which I never thought was really that good of a mold. And they try to spice it up with like the wing pack. And the wing pack feels so forced in. I don't like that either. Like, as a Magnus, I think it fails. I genuinely think it fails as a Magnus. And I don't think that's the fault of the toy. I think that's the fault of the animators wanting to just recycle the Season 1 Optimus Prime model for Season 3 for Beast Hunters because they had just remodeled Optimus Prime. So rather than create a brand new model for Ultra Magnus, they went cheap and just recycled the previous Optimus model. And I think that's where the toys have to like work with that, and it hurts them in the long run. You know, for me, that's not a good Ultra Magnus. You know, I could argue like, okay, fine, looks like the character in the show, but toy-wise, meh. I think the Platinum. I didn't put the Platinum one on here because it's a big gimmicky toy, but I think that one's better, honestly. All right, Fall of Cybertron Ultra Magnus. Very simple retool of Optimus Prime this time. So here's where like a retool of Optimus Prime actually technically worked. And what helps is the fact that Prime has an element of his transformation, the smokestacks that fold down in on his shoulders for robot mode. You can just leave those flipped up, and now Ultra Magnus has his white shoulder pylons. So it actually makes the repaint work even better. You know, and this is mostly a repaint. The only new part is his head. And maybe his weapon. I think maybe his weapon's changed too. Doesn't really matter. The point is, it works better than it should. I'm not going to put it especially high, you know, but I do think it works out better than it was supposed to. Like, I think it actually conveys Magnus pretty well, you know, which is kind of hard in a deluxe size because deluxe is just so not Ultra Magnus's size. It's just not. That takes us to Armada Ultra Magnus. So once again, we're up to a white Optimus Prime. So it's about how well does it convey that concept and that design. And I got to be honest with you, this is the best white Optimus we ever got. I honestly do think so. For starters, you have the blue on the faceplate, which actually does convey that white Magnus character. You have like an interesting color mix of the white and the grays. What really hits it for me is that little touch of red to kind of just throw that last bit of Magnus's traditional color in there to just really convey, yeah, like this is the guy. And I think it sets off everything else really well. And what works for me is it's not just trying to emulate the look of the G1 design. It's just kind of dotting the blue all over just to where it makes sense to break up the white. And that's something that a lot of the white Ultra Magnus repaints fail to do, is break up those big solid areas of white. It looks great. I think it looks fantastic. And then the fact is it's the Bendy Prime. And the Bendy Prime just looks really, really good. And it's already a really, really good toy. So yeah, there's your white Optimus Prime that can earn his way all the way up to premium price. I'm not going to put him Holy Grail or anything, nothing crazy, but I do think it works really, really well. I think it works better than it was supposed to. And then there's the Energon. Now, low-key, I've always kind of wanted this Energon repaint, but it's ungodly rare now. Like, I think there's only one on eBay, and it's the package sample that came with the originally planned mini-con set for him, not the one that eventually hit retail and then quickly vanished because it was only like a Wave 1.5 thing. Point being, it's an interesting take on Magnus, but as a Magnus, let's admit, it's not doing a great job. The color scheme is specifically chosen to look good in the vehicle mode. And in vehicle mode, he conveys Magnus. You know, the little truck is white, the huge trailer is blue. And the trailer is hiding most of that gray that shows in his robot mode to kind of like convey Magnus a little bit more. But even that's not particularly well done. Like, there's almost part of me that says, like, if you gave me this toy and called it a different name and just in the robot mode, I might believe you that this isn't Ultra Magnus, that it wasn't intended to be. So, and yes, I do know that's what he was in Micron Densetsu. I know it's an homage to his Japanese name. It's still not great. I will admit, it's not great as an Ultra Magnus. That doesn't change the fact that there's that itch in my brain that's always kind of gone, still looks kind of neat. He doesn't look neat as a Magnus, but he looks neat as a weird overload, right? And that's going to take me to the final entry, which is Shattered Glass Ultra Magnus. I'm just going to be real with you. I never liked this. So using the Delta Magnus colors, the original powered convoy colors, that makes sense, you know? And you can make those colors look pretty sinister because they are much darker than your standard Optimus or Magnus. I don't understand the ghost head. I don't understand why they went Skeletor with the head sculpt when none of the others in Shattered Glass go weird like that. At most, you might add a goatee to Rodimus. That might be the most you actually do. I don't like the Skeletor look on this Magnus. It just felt off. Yeah, it's, you know what it is? It's trying too hard. It's try hard. Like, it's not enough that he's like in more evil looking Optimus colors. No, 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 no. He has to have a skull face and be like a little bit edgelord about him. You're going too far. You've shot way past the concept here. So, and again here, like in like contrast, like I should like this the way that I like how G2 Magnus came out. It just doesn't work as well with the Delta colors. It just doesn't. It doesn't resonate the same way, you know. So that's where we're calling it. That's where we're calling it. Yeah, it's tough to kind of judge when you have to put so many different like types of Ultra Magnus in the same pile. It can be done. It can be done. I think it comes up to a fair and, you know, somewhat interesting list. But as always, I'm sure people disagree with this. I'm sure I got something wrong somewhere, so you're free to let me know in the comments below where your favorite Ultra Magnus should have been, or to let me know one I missed, because, you know, this is only like 22, I think, that I threw in here. You know, there's others out there. Couldn't throw them all in, but this is your sampling. That's how I think the Magnuses fell out. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.